David. Good to see you again. Really enjoyed our last couple of discussions. Firstly, exploring why sales capability is important to any organisation. And then during our last discussion, why having a sales and account management capability framework in place is so valuable in underpinning your business. And you shared some really great examples of some of the things that having a capability framework support. And we said we'd get back together just to explore a couple of these in a little bit more detail. So maybe come to you firstly with how have you seen a capability framework in action to help identify people's learning needs, and then what solutions were put in place to actually support their development?
So I think the best example I've seen of that, Alan, kind of came in 2 or 3 parts. So, excuse me, I'll step through each. So the first part was this idea of like a competency pathway or a staircase that helps people identify what they need to do or learn or achieve to progress further within their roles. So, for example, that might be about technical competence, or it might be about actually the person needs to be stronger at understanding customer needs. So therefore you might then help them with or support them with questioning techniques and different probing and follow-up question styles. So that might be just one tiny example of how that something could be identified in that pathway. So that was great for identifying individual needs. This approach also gave quite a lot of people the incentive to develop, because there were rewards that were attached to achieving each level of that pathway. So those people who want to develop on their own initiative almost always will. What I found was this tool motivated those that otherwise might have been a little bit more reluctant to start with. So that was really good. And then building on that, the next stage of the piece was a series of development centres, which looked right across the whole sales team and account management team, and it compared everyone in a consistent way to the expectations within the framework. So that was great for individual needs, but also it looked at generic needs across the team, and it enabled that business to create programmes that would address areas that benefited multiple people. So, for example, that might be the ability to trade more effectively and deliver better results. And then to make sure that people were actually doing it for real and not just in the classroom, there was a series of observations set up in the field to kind of, watch people, give them feedback and help them develop. And it's important to stress the solutions that I've seen weren't just about training. I mean, that was part of it, but that also led to more shadowing, buddying with peers in the group, and more coaching and more mentoring. So the result was a general raising of standards and an improvement in results across the board. But I'm wondering about you, Alan. What have you seen in other industries or with other clients?
Yeah, no, it's very happy to share a bit and build on some of the really great examples that you just picked up there as well. But as you know, my background was in the insurance industry as well. But since joining Customer Attuned nearly 8 years ago, I've had the really good fortune to work with clients across many industry sectors. For example, retail, pharmaceuticals, automotive, education, and banking, as well as continuing to work with a number of clients in both the health and general insurance sectors. But what I found really interesting is that although the industries are different and therefore the underlying, I suppose, required product or proposition knowledge is different, the fundamental capabilities needed to be a successful sales and account manager are actually the same. And the distribution models and therefore the relationships that people need to manage might also be different, whether they're direct business to business relationships, whether it's a franchise model, through distributors or intermediated businesses. But again, many of those identified capability gaps, are similar. And as a result, as an organisation, we'll be able to work on a number of development programmes for clients across different sectors that really benefit from the best practices drawn from across multiple sectors. Whether that be in how to sell your proposition effectively, or how to build and manage relationships, or how to effectively negotiate in ever-changing market conditions. And I suppose the one thing I would say is that key to the success of all of these programs has been the need to really get under the skin and understand the nuances of each client and each industry sector to ensure that all solutions are designed around the specific realities of the day-to-day roles of those we're working with. And I think there's very limited value in using generic examples, for example, such as how to sell a tin of baked beans to someone trying to sell cars. Yes, it's good sometimes to share examples from other sectors, but when it comes to applying the knowledge, it has to be applied to examples and situations that resonate with the individual.
Yeah, that makes total sense, Alan. I've seen many examples of that, from selling a pen to a smoke alarm to whatever. So yeah, that makes sense. It's a really interesting bit of insight actually that you said. Excuse me, the core capabilities pretty much translate across different sectors, but they're based on a deeper understanding of the client and the area that they operate in. So when we think about developing that capability and identifying learning or development needs for people or teams, Alan, what would you say is the best way to go about creating solutions to fit?
I suppose, yeah, the million-dollar question. But no, I think, as I said, every client is unique. And so I suppose the key starting point is understanding their specific needs. And I think then, having established and understood, that wider strategic or tactical need for any development program, I really like to personalize it very early by asking, a fundamental question along the lines of, well, what do you want your people in this development program to do differently as a result of attending and completing the program? And I think this focus of what you want them to do differently gets away from just identifying the acquisition of knowledge, and it helps to unpack what specifically needs to be done better by making use of any new or improved knowledge, and what extra value you're looking for those participants to add into their role. And that therefore allows us to design programs that cover both what needs to be developed, but most importantly, how this will change what the individual will do as a result of attending. And I think this can really then help inform the success of your program. And I'd be interested, David, from your perspective, some of the things you talked about earlier on. I mean, how did you know the programs you mentioned earlier were actually successful and justified the investment that you put into them?
If you're talking about measuring the effect, that's probably a whole other conversation in itself, Alan. I mean, in simple terms, it's about defining upfront what your targets are, what your critical success factors are, before you even start any work on frameworks or learning solutions. Because, like you said, what is it you want to be different? What do you want people to do differently? But measuring the impact on the business result, yeah, that seems like a topic on its own. Maybe we should be thinking about doing another video to cover that, Alan.
Well, maybe that's not a bad thing to think about. It seems like a pretty logical place to go next. So, well, why don't we aim to pick this up in a few weeks' time? So, but meantime, if anyone watching this video wants to find out more about what we've discussed today, please do contact either us or indeed any member of the wider Customer Attune team. All of our details are on our website, as shared on the video, at customerattune.com. So, anyway, it's been great to chat to you again, David, and let's pick this up again in a few weeks' time.
Cool.